used to be that I thought I wanted to make my wife happy.
Mm-hmm.
And now that is secondary to I want to make my wife feel safe. Becoming the safe environment in which our people show up is such a powerful way to encourage their own open-heartedness, their own connection mode. If they feel safe, they're not going to go into protection mode for the most part. And now the odds of connection go up dramatically. So safety is an essential ingredient in being able to open one's heart. If I'm rooted in that faith that all is okay, that I am okay, that I am fundamentally loved, the sense of safety I experience in that moment can transcend this moment of communication with my wife. And in that place of safety, there's an increased chance that I get to stay in a calm mode, in a connection mode. Helps me to keep my heart open.
So you're feeling like the spark in your marriage is fading? My 4-Week Connection Challenge can help you close that distance. Each week, you and your spouse will focus on a new way to reconnect emotionally, spiritually, through fun, and even physically. So don't let busyness steal your closeness. Jump into the 4-Week Connection Challenge and start rebuilding the intimacy that you've been longing for in your marriage. Welcome to today's Awesome Marriage Podcast. I am so thrilled to have my longtime friend, Dr. Kelly Flanagan, join me today. Kelly is a clinical psychologist. He's an author. He's a coach and a speaker with over 20 years of experience helping people strengthen their relationships. He's the best-selling author of Lovable, and his newest book, The Road Less Triggered, Turning Conflict and Connection with a Single Choice, releases in March. We're going to go into that book today. Kelly's here to share more practical wisdom on how to move from conflict to connection in marriage and beyond. Let's welcome Kelly to the show. Kelly, welcome to Awesome Marriage Podcast. It has been a while since we've been together, and I'm excited about the new book, things we're going to talk about, and just to get to spend time with you again. Thanks for saying yes.
It's so good to be back here with you, Dr. Kim. Thanks for having me.
It's just always so much fun. So, The Road Less Triggered is the book, but that word trigger, oh my gosh. When I read the book, I'm just thinking, I use that word all the time. It is a buzzword, and it's so true for us, but it seems like everyone has something that triggers them. Is that the motivation to write the book?
I actually hesitated to use the word triggered in the title because it is such a buzzword, and I didn't want the book to present as sort of like trying to leverage the buzz around that word, because it's really not what it's about. And I mentioned that as you know in the introduction that we seem to take the word triggered to two different extremes. One, like we think of almost like combat veterans being triggered by loud noises.
Yeah.
It's complex post-traumatic stress. It's a clinical issue. And then on the other hand, you have it as more that buzzword sort of vibe. You've got an influencer on TikTok who doesn't get the right kind of cold foam on their latte, and all of a sudden they're triggered and telling all of their followers about it. It doesn't then it doesn't really mean anything. It just means being a little upset, right? Or not getting exactly what you want. Yeah. And I wanted to focus specifically on a specific repetitive moment that happens in our relationships when we become triggered into a mode of protection in our relationships rather than connection that basically disrupts whatever we've got going on well in the relationship and sort of puts us into a cycle of rupture and repair that's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of time and resources and relationship capital to repair. I wanted to focus on that specific moment in relationships. I wanted to focus on it because I needed to focus on it. I was beginning to recognize that pattern in my relationships, and so it needed to be a focus for me.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think sometimes, like you said, you recognize it. I think sometimes we don't recognize it. We just keep doing it.
We just keep doing it. It's so ubiquitous. Like it's the pattern of relationship, right?
Yes.
As you seek to connect, there's a rupture, you go through the repair, goes well for a while, and then it happens again. I mean, I've said in a bunch of different places, most relationship conflict isn't like D-Day, it's like Groundhog Day, right? Like that Bill Murray movie where you just repeat the same scenario over and over again. And these triggers are at the heart of that pattern. And I needed to disrupt that pattern in my own life. And I wanted to help others disrupt it in their relationships.
Yeah, because I think if we don't do something about it, every time we have the disruption, I'm not sure the connection even gets back to where it was before. It seems like it probably just affects it a little bit, so you don't quite get there.
Every time you leave just a little more armor on, right? Every
Yes.
time
Yeah.
you just stay in a little bit more protection mode, and over time that accumulates to the point where, I mean, even the littlest things can be said, and it's interpreted through that lens, and the space between connected and triggered just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks over time. And that's when you
Yeah.
see relationships fall apart, right? So I want to
Absolutely.
help people make sure they don't sort of get to
Don't
that
get there.
threshold.
So the road less triggered kind of gives this picture that there's maybe a single choice we can make that makes all the difference in the connection we experience with our spouse. So what is that choice?
Well, so for me, you and I think first got connected through my first book, Lovable, and we've talked
Yes.
about that book together. I published that in 2017, and it's a book about really discovering freedom from my shame, and rediscovering my sense of worthiness, in relationship to God and to my existence and in my relationships. And that all sounds great. And I was able to live that reality out about 98% of the time. And then 2% of the time I'd get triggered. And it really culminated for me in, it was during COVID, actually. I was getting triggered frequently. I was in the middle of sort of my business partnership dissolving, my friendship with my business partner dissolving. COVID hit, and we were in the middle of the stress. My wife and I are transitioning our therapy practices to online businesses. Our kids were schooling from home, which was a total disaster. There's a reason we did not homeschool. And I was just getting triggered left and right. And one afternoon, I don't tell this story in the book, but one afternoon we because all the public pools were shut down. So my wife had finally convinced me to get an above ground pool in our backyard, and she was filling it for the first time. And she put a hose over the edge of it and put a rock on the hose to hold it there. Well, the rock wasn't heavy enough. And so the hose came out, and I walked out of the house like 3 hours later, and our backyard was, a lake, and there was this dry pool in the middle of it. Right. And I got triggered, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go blow off steam on a bike ride. Not a smart idea to go on a high speed bike ride when you're frustrated and angry. I wasn't very cautious. Ended up barely missing a car, went over the handlebars, broke my collarbone in a few places. That's how I spent the rest of 2020, was recovering from that. It never really healed. They're called fibrous tissue non-union fractures. So I got to the end of 2020, and I was like, what am I going to do I got to get back in shape in 21, So I was literally on New Year's Eve in the middle of looking up like fitness resolutions, like keto versus paleo diets and circuits versus, strength training and all this stuff. And right in the middle of that, I came across this quote from an author named Michael Singer. Don't let anything in life be important enough that you're willing to close your heart over it. Don't let anything in life be important enough that you're willing to close your heart over it. And when I look back at 2020, I saw it happening again and again. I closed my heart there, and it created this suffering. I closed my heart there, and it created this suffering. I closed my heart there, over and over again. And so right then and there, I decided I'm going to focus more on my emotional and spiritual heart than my physical heart going into next year. And my New Year's resolution going into 2021 was, moment to moment, I will notice my heart closing and try to open it back up. And I was wise enough at the beginning to put that word try in there.
Yeah.
Try to open it back up. Moment to moment, I will notice my heart closing and try to open it back up. And, they say most New Year's resolutions are by the wayside by about the third week of January. That resolution, here we are, 5-6 years later, has really become my core spiritual practice. I think of it as my way of praying to be present to the condition of my heart, to notice when it starts to close and to open it back up. And so when I reference a single choice in the subtitle, turning conflict into connection with a single choice, that single choice is the choice to open your heart back up to what's happening in the moment. Now, easier said than done, as I learned. And as I got into that practice of choosing open-heartedness, I discovered there wasn't anything that could teach me how to do it. Like, I went to the sciences, I went to all the world's spiritual and wisdom traditions. There was no roadmap for learning how to live open-heartedly. And if there was going to be a roadmap, I was going to have to create it. And that's what I did over the next several years. And that's what this book is about.
So good. So somebody's listening, they're thinking, how do you know when your heart's closing? How do you become aware of that? Because I think a lot of times we're not, and we just keep doing like we talk, same trigger, same closing our heart. How do we even recognize that?
Yeah. Well, one of the most powerful experiences I had previous to that was I was at I was co-facilitating a couples retreat, and my co-facilitator did this exercise where she had the spouses, the partners face each other with their knees touching and lock eyes. She said, just do what I tell you to do. Don't ask any questions. And she said, all right, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, close your hearts to each other. Don't let the other person in. Think of all the reasons that, all the ways that they've hurt you, all the reasons that you want to stay safe from them, that you want to protect yourself from them. Keep your heart closed. And she said, 1, 2, 3, open your hearts to each other. Think of all the reasons that you're grateful for their existence. Think of all the reasons that they're essential in your story. Think of all the reasons that you married them in the first place. And she went back and forth like this for 1, 2, 3, close your hearts to each other. And then she'd say 1, 2, 3, open your hearts to each other, right? And she went back and forth on that for a while. And when she brought everybody back into a circle, she said, what was it like when your heart was closed? And everyone described the same things. They described all those things that go along with protection mode, like a hard body, tense muscles, tension in your chest, aggressive thoughts, those sorts of experiences internally. And what was it like when your heart opened? Everyone said the same thing, right? They said, I felt like a calmness and a relaxation moved through my body, almost like endorphins after a run. I felt gratitude and appreciation and love. And then the kicker was, I love this. She said, okay, but this is what I really wanted you to take away from that exercise. You had a choice. Like you were opening and closing your heart like on a hinge when I told you to, right? So maybe you have more of a choice than you think. And really this book is about restoring to people their sense of choice over whether or not their heart opens or closes. Because when we get triggered, it feels like we don't have a choice. The heart just closes. Right. And now we have lost all access to our wisest way of responding in that moment. And so we want to expand that moment of choice apart for people and teach people how to make that choice to keep your heart open in that moment so you can respond in the wisest way possible. And so I think one of the earliest warning signs, and we talk about this in the book, is what's happening in your body, right? When your body is starting to feel aroused, when your nervous system is starting to get dysregulated. Triggered is as much a bodily response as it is a mental one. And so that's one of the first places we go in the process, is to bring awareness to the body and what it's telling you about how you're about to be triggered.
That's so good. And because our body gives us so many signals, and I think sometimes we just don't, I figured out a long time ago, when I'm getting angry, I get this little back here.
Yes.
And that's when I have the choice to ignore it and go on, or to say, oh, that's a trigger. I mean, that's a sign for me. That's a red flag that I need to do something there. And I think the more we can take time to be aware of that, and I think just praying, ask God to reveal to me those things that go on in my body, because I think we have a tendency sometimes to let our whatever's going on, anger, frustration, whatever's going on, take over that.
Well, and in the road less triggered, what I talk about is we've become really dependent upon our 5 senses. What sight, sound. I'd always get them wrong, but we all know what the 5 senses are. Yeah. And the thing about those senses is that they're what we call these as psychologists exteroceptive senses, which means that they're senses that are geared towards our outer world. They're designed to take in stimulus from the outer world and process it and make meaning of it. And the earliest warning sign usually that we're getting triggered doesn't come from the outer world. We don't know we're triggered until we're saying things and we see the way our partners are reacting and that kind of thing. That's when our 5 senses are helpful, but it's sort of too late at that point. Cat's already out of the bag, so to speak. We have the 6th sense, which is a superpower of ours, which is called interoception, which is the capacity to tune into what's happening in your body. And it's dramatically underutilized. We use it unconsciously, but we don't use it consciously. So for instance, at some point today, I'll be sitting here and think, I really got to go to the bathroom before my next appointment. I just used interoception. I just tuned into the feelings in my bladder, and I made meaning of it and said, I got to do this. When we start to use that consciously, as you just said, for instance, like, ooh, I'm feeling this thing in the back of my neck. That's a sign I'm starting to get angry. We've now sort of utilized that 6th sense to start to give us a greater warning that we're getting triggered.
So good. So good. And then you use the term get calm, which I think is kind of the reaction to that once we are aware of it instead of, not reacting, responding.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that I say in the book is that the difference between that essentially a response is the fruit of self-regulation, whereas a reaction is a failure of self-regulation. We hear those two terms. I want to respond, not react. And really the key difference is your capacity to regulate before you start taking action. The temptation always is to do something in order to calm ourselves in here. And what we need to be doing is calming ourselves in here before we do anything, basically. Yeah. And so we tend to get that out of order. And so absolutely, we're talking about learning to slow down. First of all, notice using the body, waist to temples, as you pointed out, in your neck. Mine's in my chest. Some people have it in their stomach.
Yeah.
But using those bodily signs that you're starting to get triggered in order to slow down and actually do nothing at first until we're calm. And so often we're sort of in the process of, I know me, like what I think is, if I could just get my wife to say that thing that I think I deserve, right?
Yeah.
If I could just get her to say that, then I'll be calm in here. That has worked 0 times in 25 years. Trying to convince somebody else to change what's going on in their inner life in order to change your own inner life tends to be a bit of a disaster. And it certainly has been for me. And so instead, we sort of reverse the order of that. We say, okay, well, how do I go directly to the source of my dysregulation? How do I get calm? And then decide how I'm going to connect from there. We had just, a few weeks ago, it was like a blazing, it was blazing here, and our furnace went out. Our air conditioner went out. It was the control board basically on the furnace that went bad after 20 years. And it occurred to me that in relationships, when our inner control board is sort of on the fritz and we are starting to get dysregulated, most of us, our first response, instead of saying, let's tend to that control board and get that working properly, we think, how can I change the weather outside to make sure it stays cool here in the house, right? How can I go out there and change the people around me and the situations around me to make it calmer in here? And we just want to reverse that. Go straight to the control board, get yourself calm, and then start to deal with the weather.
It's really taking personal responsibility. I mean, and one of the things that it's a problem in our culture of people we just don't do that real easily anymore, but we have to get there.
That we are definitely trending. If you just go on social media, we are trending toward projecting blame for everything onto the other, right? The other,
yes,
them, they. And it's a natural instinct. It's a natural defensive response. I do it. Everybody does it. But we have to ultimately acknowledge that in the entire course of human history, it has not been a sustainable solution to anything. That taking personal responsibility for how you show up really is the solution. And so one of the ways, yes, you're right, that we take personal responsibility here is we say, I'm going to take personal responsibility for showing up as a calm presence in my relationships. And until I can figure out how to do that, I might want to think twice about showing up in those relationships, because I'm probably going to create more problems than I solve.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we switch from connection mode to protection mode in a marriage situation, how do we recognize when that's happening?
Yeah, so this was an eye-opener for me many years ago. I didn't know what to do with it until I started working with these triggered moments specifically. But this was an eye-opener for me. In fact, I quit. I was a trained couples therapist. I was trained at Penn State in getting a PhD, specialty in marriage, conflict, and communication. And so I went out in the world and I started practicing therapy. And like what hit me was that this is the way I would always say it to couples. The part of you that wants to connect with each other called me and made this appointment. The parts of you that want to protect yourselves from each other showed up and sat on the couch, and that's a problem. Like, yes, so I know a part of you wants to connect, but the part of you that's showing up wants to protect, and those are mutually exclusive ways of being. You can't connect if you're protecting. So we're going to have to help you learn how to switch out of protection mode and into connection mode. Now, back then, I didn't know how to help people do that. I didn't have this, what I call the peaceful pivot process that I talk about in The Road Less Triggered. I was unable to help couples do that. So what I would do at that point is I would split them out into individual therapies. I'd say it'll be not productive at all if you are sitting here on the couch together in protection mode. That will only produce more conflict. So let's split you into individual appointments, see if we can get you back into connection mode. And then we can come together and start to work on resolutions. And that's something I've now carried forward to today and into the work that I do with couples. I will ask them, like they show up on my video screen, on Zoom. I can see the looks on their faces. And I go, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, and I talk about this exercise in the book, the name your number exercise. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being your heart is as closed as can be. You're in protection mode. You don't even know if you want to be here with this person, maybe not even married to them. 10 is your heart is wide open. You're totally in connection mode. Like the day you got married, or the day you got engaged, or the day you met. Where's your number? And if they tell me that their number's like a 3, right? They're leaning heavily towards a closed heart and protection mode. I'll tell them, we're not going to work on solving any problems in your relationship today. Your work in this hour will be to get your hearts open, because nothing productive will happen until you can get back into connection mode. So that's the work for the hour. And that's how important I think this is, and this message of this book is that until we can get less triggered, back into connection mode, our efforts to connect will be self-sabotaged, basically.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And just helping couples take the time to realize that. Because I think most couples, from the time they make the appointment till the time they come in, they don't think about we're different than we decided together to go to counseling when we're sitting on that couch, but helping them be aware of that and seeing the barrier that is.
Yes. And the tricky thing is that when things are going well, you're not inclined to sort of dig into sticky issues and sticky topics, right? So the irony is that most couples, the only time they start digging into the tough topics is when they're triggered.
Yes.
And so no wonder it feels like those conversations always break badly, because they're always initiated by being triggered. What does it look like to recognize that there's a difference between protection mode and connection mode, and to actually go, oh, we're in connection mode right now. Now is exactly the time to have that tough conversation.
Absolutely.
And then we can support each other in staying in connection mode during that conversation. So yeah, this self-awareness of which mode you're in is pretty essential to healthy communication.
Yes. I was thinking of some people I've worked with, and they'll come in and maybe they've had to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get in. And they say, well, we came in anyway, but everything's good now. And so I have them tell me the situation. And I say, so has that happened before? Oh, yeah. It happens all the time. I said, well, then I think can we work on breaking that cycle, and helping them do that. But I think that happens a lot, that, things are better. And I think I've had people tell me, we knew we needed to come in. I had one lady that said it had been 5 years since she first thought about coming in.
Yeah, wow.
But things would get better. And then she just wouldn't make that phone call, or they wouldn't make that phone call. And so I think there's so much within us that just kind of almost fights that for some reason.
Absolutely. We don't enjoy being aroused. We don't enjoy being dysregulated. We don't enjoy the sense of risk that comes with those tough conversations and the potential for relationship rupture. So when things sort of settle back into a more comfortable rhythm, our motivation to address those things really changes. What I hope this book does is basically, and this is the way that I think I share this at some point in it, I see our triggered moments now as like an X on a treasure map, right? And most couples are trying actually to avoid the X, right? They're literally trying to avoid the treasure. And what can happen as you read this book is that you go, oh, my triggered moments are an X on the treasure map. If we stop on that point and we dig into them, there's treasure buried beneath that, both for my own personal and spiritual growth, as well as our relational growth. And when that shift sort of starts to happen, it's like, ooh, we're triggered. This is going to be great if we know how to dig into this. That's a game changer. That's a game changer. Instead of like, we're triggered, let's try to just brush this under the rug as fast as possible so we can get back to feeling okay. So that's an exciting game changer, I think, for couples.
That's huge. That's huge. Where's our faith come in with this whole thing of disrupting the patterns, moving toward peace, all those kind of compassion? How do we put our faith into that?
So something's really changed dramatically for me in the 5-6 years since I've started to practice open-heartedness and practice the peaceful pivot process. It used to be that I thought I wanted to make my wife happy. And now that is secondary to I want to make my wife feel safe. I want her to feel safe. Becoming the safe environment in which our people show up is such a powerful way to encourage their own open-heartedness their own connection mode. If they feel safe, they're not going to go into protection mode for the most part. And now the odds of connection go up dramatically. So safety is an essential ingredient in being able to open one's heart. And I can't think of anything that makes us feel safer than the faith of knowing we're walking around in a God-saturated world in which we are absolutely beloved and loved unconditionally, right? When my wife says or does the thing that triggers me, right? If I'm rooted in that faith that all is okay, that I am okay, that I am fundamentally loved, right?
Yeah.
The sense of safety I experience in that moment can transcend this moment of communication with my wife. And in that place of safety, there's an increased chance that I get to stay in a calm mode, in a connection mode. Helps me to keep my heart open. So I think having that bigger container that we know we are in at all times, that is a fundamentally safe place to be, is essential to sort of helping us regulate and stay connected.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so good. I loved what you said about we live in a God-saturated world. I love just what the image that comes to my mind when I think about that. It's such a good description of the truth of that, and I think we lose sight of that so easy.
I was out for a walk just before this call, and it was a little chilly here this morning, and I was actually hoping to warm up, but it was chilly, and then I went through this patch of sunlight that was coming through the trees, and I just stopped, and I just turned to the sunlight, and I just sort of stood in it, closed my eyes, and felt gratitude for the sound of the leaves in the trees and the sun on my skin, and just the chance to be here for that moment.
Yeah.
And the grace of that and the calm that came over me. I've now expanded in that moment, my capacity to handle some of the normally triggering things to me without getting dysregulated is expanded dramatically. Because I'm sort of rooted in a deeper foundation and a deeper calm that sort of transcends the ebbs and flows of the given moment in a relationship.
So good. Nancy and I did a podcast together, and I think anyway, I was listening to it, just kind of making sure everything had sounded good in it. But she said something in it about how, with her relationship with God and how she listens. And I just said in the podcast, I don't do that very well. It's something that I'm starting to work on that I just really didn't think about. She said that it's like God just said, listen to your wife. She's doing something that I would love for you to do. And so
yes.
I think it's been hard because my mind's always going up. What am I going to do next? This kind of stuff, all that kind of stuff. But when I'm with him in that quiet time in the morning, to take time to listen, kind of like what you're saying, just coming into that sunlight and just resting in it for a minute.
They're complementary ways of being presence and productivity, and they're both essential and they're both important. But I think one of the things us men lose sight of is that just simple presence is productive in its own way, right? It produces a state in a way and a condition inside that prepares you to enter into all of your productivity in a calmer and more centered and more rooted way. And we do have something to learn from our wives. It seems to come easier to them to slip into that place of deep presence.
Yes. When I realized, it took me a while to realize how much wisdom Nancy had, I thought, wow, I've already missed out on it. I'm not going to miss out any more of it because
good for you.
God has gifted her and to listen to her. She has so much insight and wisdom in so many areas.
I tell you, that is a fundamental shift I see in couples when the ways that you're different from me become not things I need to fix or change to get to be more like me, but like it's complementary wisdom. It's wisdom I don't have and that I can now like appreciate and benefit from. That is a huge shift in a relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sure is. So say a couple's listening and they say, we're doing this, or maybe they've gotten into it a while about being aware of triggers and those kind of things. But what if they get into it? Okay, I didn't recognize things, I'm into it. How do you get out of it once you get into it as a couple? Can you get out of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you're triggered and the moment is off and running and you can feel yourself doing that thing. And usually what follows on the heels of bodily dysregulation is cognitive dysregulation. You start to think and then do all the defensive things. That's defensiveness immediately follows on that moment of being triggered. The important message for couples is that you always have a chance for your awareness to kick in. No matter how, I remember one time my wife, we'd literally been fighting for a day. And I'll never forget it. We were in the bathroom. I was like brushing my teeth. She's over here. I remember. I don't know what she was doing. Brushing my teeth. And I said something while I was looking at myself in the mirror. And I go, I don't even believe what I just said. I know that's not true. I know that's just me being defensive. I know that is a fundamentally untrue statement that I just said. I looked at her and I said, I'm not speaking the truth. I'm clearly not fit for conversation. I'm going to take some space until I can get myself into a state where I'm ready to connect. So I think number one, the most powerful thing you can do is that self-awareness. Name your number. If you can catch yourself closing, you're going to give yourself more freedom to stay open. But however, if you don't and you're into defensiveness, then just confessing the way your heart is closing can be a powerful disruptor to that conflict cycle. Oh my gosh. Hey, this happened just this summer. I won't go into all the details. Let's just say my wife applied for pre-approval for a mortgage when I thought we weren't looking at anything. And I got really triggered. And I got triggered for a number of hours. And I said and did things that I'm not proud of. But the reversal of it was to come to her and say, okay, everything I just did for the last few hours was my closed heart. It was from a closed heart. And I did this and this and this. If I open my heart, this is what I want to do and say. And would you be willing to forgive what I did out of a closed heart and open up to how I want to approach this from an open-hearted place? And to her credit, she did, right? She was willing to say, okay, I get that. Say and do things we don't mean when we're closed. And if you're ready to open, I'm ready to be open to you as well. Now her heart was probably on a little bit more of a hinge at that point, because she's like, is he just going to revert to, but 15, 20 minutes into a new conversation, all of a sudden there's some trust growing that, oh yeah, his heart really is open. So I would say confessing your closing, what am I doing defensively? Name it. And then, there's this belief that we can't take a break, that we can't pause. One of the most powerful things I will do is I will put my hand over the place in my body where I'm feeling the dysregulation, and I'll do a brief breathing exercise, which I describe in the book. I call it the margin for terror exercise in the book, but I'll do a brief breathing exercise. And if that's not enough to get me calm and regulated and open in the moment, I'll let my wife know I need a little bit of break to go take care of myself. And this isn't the kind of withdrawal that is often punishment in relationship, or, like, I just don't want to talk about this anymore. It's not a power move. It's, it's truly a self-soothing move. And as the trust develops in the relationship, that's what you're doing. Oh, you're taking responsibility for yourself. You're going off to calm yourself, and you'll come back when you're calm. I think that's absolutely needs to be on the table as an option for couples, because plowing ahead with the conversation when you're dysregulated, like we said, it's not gonna go anywhere good.
No, and I think taking that just time to regulate yourself is so important. I think a lot of times, and I think letting our spouse know we're coming back.
Exactly.
I'm not going to ride my bike again, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm coming back.
I once did this with my wife, and I remember she was boiling green beans, and I thought I'd be back by the time the green beans were ready, and it's like, I don't know, 12 hours later, I had to text her and be like, I'm really not punishing you with this. It's just taking me this long to get calm and, open again this time. And so letting him know, like, this is actually relational work I'm doing off on my own, getting myself in this state that is going to actually promote our connection. So I think
you build that.
Yes.
No, you build that trust as you do that then, and then you do it the next time. And then it's like, he'll be back.
Exactly.
And things will be better when he comes back.
That's right. And that's exactly it. There's a powerful trust that grows, and that trust soothes the other person's potential abandonment fears. Oh, you're just leaving me again, right? It's like, oh no, you're coming back. That is a powerful trust that can start to build.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. When you said that about abandonment, so many people have experienced that in their life, and they need to know that you're not abandoning me.
Exactly.
You're making our relationship better by doing what you need to do.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. Talk about getting free, and the pivot. You kind of alluded to that early. What do we need to be pivoting away from, and what do we need to be pivoting towards?
Yeah. So overall, the three parts of the process that I talk about in the book are getting calm, getting free, and then getting connected. And what I notice in myself and what I see in a lot of people is this temptation that once they're calm again, they want to skip right to getting connected once more. And what you discover is that it will work sometimes, and then other times, before you know it, you're triggered all over again, right? And now you're back having to get calm all over again. And it's actually it actually creates a little more chaos because you're less predictable, actually. At least before, they knew you were going to get triggered every time. Now you're able to stay calm sometimes, and then sometimes you get triggered, and now your partner's like, you're unpredictable, and on top of being a pain in my butt. So and so what I encourage folks to do is to go through the second part of the process before they try to get reconnected, which I call getting free, which is starting to get free of the emotional patterns that are underpinning that triggered reaction for you. One of the big, so the conversation that pivots is the conversation that goes on between you and your people, and you pivot that conversation to what's going on within you. And I say you pivot that conversation to the pain point that is being triggered within you that is actually driving your triggered reaction. Now, what I mean by that, and there's this concept in science called intervening variables. An intervening variable is the variable you can't see that actually explains the reaction or the connection between two things, the relationship between two things. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's studies that show that when you buy a bunch of a team at the office, when you buy them pizza and throw them a pizza party, they're more productive later that day. So does pizza produce productivity? Not for me. It makes me want to go to sleep. Pizza produces greater team spirit and cooperation, which produces more productivity. It's the team spirit is the intervening variable, right? Or if you get a good night's sleep, you score better on tests. Research shows this, right? Does sleep produce better test performance? Definitely not, because if you stayed asleep, you'd get a 0 on the test, right?
Right.
Sleep produces better concentration, which produces better test performance. The concentration is the intervening variable. So what's the intervening variable in our triggered moments, right? And it is so often a pain point that is getting aroused within us, and that we need to be in conversation with that pain point in order to understand how it's driving our triggered reaction. I tell an anecdote in the book about a man who is rowing on a foggy lake, just utterly peaceful one morning, enjoying his solitude and silence. And then in the fog, suddenly his boat bumps up against another boat, and he screams out at the person in the other boat, "Why don't you watch where you're going?" Like right as he's screaming it, the breeze comes and the fog dissipates, and he sees that the other boat is empty. He thought he was reacting to a person. He was reacting to what experience was triggered inside of him when the boat's bumped, right? So I encourage people to think of, when your boat bumps up against another boat, don't immediately go to accusing and blaming the person. Look for the intervening variable, the thing that's happening inside of you in that moment that is explaining your triggered reaction.
So good. And it's just the difference in our lives if we take the time to do those things.
Absolutely.
Because they're not natural for most of us.
No.
And so we have to work at it.
No, they're not. And what a powerful thing starts to happen. So, and what I would say is that this pivot that you make to your pain point, it simplifies your stress dramatically. Because I'll give you an example. In the last week, I was triggered by my wife when she called me out on not sending a Venmo payment for the senior t-shirts. I was triggered by my daughter for the way I cheered at her golf match. And then I was triggered by her golf coach on a separate occasion for getting too close to the players, confronting me for getting too close to the players. That's that's a week of complicated relational problems, right? It's like I got a coach to deal with, I got my daughter to deal with, I got my wife to deal with. But actually, when you slow down and you pivot from the conversation between all these different people and all these complicated situations, it's the exact same experience that's being triggered in me, which is a sense of inadequacy, a sense of being wrong and getting in trouble and not being liked and not being loved, right? Not being appreciated. Like all of a sudden, it's super simple. I don't have 3 people and situations to manage and fix and repair. I've got one pain point inside of me that I need to manage differently and to disrupt the way that it leads me to react in triggered ways. So to me, the powerful pivot that happens in the get free stage of this process is the simplification of what you really need to deal with. It's not dozens of people. It's not dozens of situations that you have no control over. It's a pain point inside of you.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And then I think at that time we're able again to deal with that and ask God to help us deal with that. But
Absolutely.
that's go ahead.
I was going to say, like, to your point earlier, it's something you can actually take ownership of. It's inside of you. It's something that you
Yeah.
can take responsibility for, and you can ask for help from in prayer and with God as well. Absolutely.
And I think in the faith picture of knowing with God we are adequate, believing the things that God says about us, I think for me, then it makes it's a step toward me not feeling that way about myself. Does that make sense? And if I can really, God says, no, you are capable. You're capable of doing
100%.
anything that I put in front of you. And then then if somebody says something like things that were said to you, it's like, okay, it may not be that easy. You still may have that twinge or,
Yes.
or that, or.
And I think I love having conversations with you, Dr. Kim, because it makes me think more deeply about these things. Because I mentioned that after the publication of Lovable, I knew in a fundamental way that I was worthy, that I was adequate, right? That I was loved by God as I am. And yet I'd get triggered into these feelings of inadequacy over and over again. And so the temptation is when you go, I know in my head I'm adequate. I've learned in my relationship with God that I'm adequate. So you must be the reason that I feel inadequate, because when you do and say X, I start to get triggered into that pain point. And one of the things we talk about in the get free stage of this process is, even though a part of you knows you're adequate, a part of you is rooted in your faith and your relationship with God and the way that you're loved by God, there is another part of you in there then that still doesn't know it. And that part of you it's a way of becoming more intimately connected with our own wounded parts and going, there's more of me in here to heal, obviously. And one of the ways I illustrate this is, if my wife looked at me and she said, you're an alien from the planet Mars, it wouldn't trigger me. I don't think it's true, right? Now, if she looks at me and she goes, you haven't been an adequate husband this week, I'm going to get a little triggered, right? Because there is a part of me that believes that's true. So when we're being triggered, even though a part of us knows that we rest securely in the loving arms of God, there's a part of us that still doubts that, and that part is still in need of healing and redemption. And instead of blaming my wife for causing that feeling in me, I'm going to take responsibility for the fact that it exists in me and continue to do that healing work.
That's so good. Before we started recording, I shared with you a thing that Nancy and I went to last week with a bunch of other marriage leaders. And on the way, even a couple of days before, it was like, why did they invite me to this? These people, I don't deserve to be there.
Yes.
What am I going to say? Can I just eat lunch real fast and get out of the room, or those kind of things? And finally, I think God, on the plane ride, I think God just showed me I opened the door for you to be here, and you just be yourself. And I felt this peace over me. But it's just how we can I think we can all get into that feeling of inadequacy.
Absolutely. Well, and your willingness to acknowledge your inadequacy made it available for God to speak to, right?
It's
like
true.
if you'd have said, well, I'm feeling inadequate this morning because my wife said that terrible thing, that's why I'm feeling inadequate. You don't make that available to be healed and to be redeemed, but you did. And so it did. I'm going to an event tomorrow or Thursday, actually, where I just don't think I have any business being in the room, and I'm going to be in a similar situation. And what I'll do is I will take that younger part of me, who's like, what are we doing here? Like, I feel like I'm about 10 and we're in a room with a bunch of professionals, and I'll be like, yeah, dude, I know it's crazy. Like, we've been through a lot since you were 10, and you actually, this is a room that's okay for you to be in now. And so I will invite God to speak to that part of me. I will speak to that part of me, and I'll try to encourage it, and that it can be calm and that it belongs. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. And I think we're just human. Those things happen, things that
Absolutely.
you said about marriage, anytime people come up to us and they think we have this perfect marriage, and I do everything I can to dispel that rumor, because we have a great marriage, but we don't have a perfect marriage. And we still have, every season you go through, there's new things to deal with and to figure out together. And what we found, as long as we're doing that together, then we avoid the triggers. We avoid so much of that. Not perfectly.
Yeah, that's right.
because we did not do that well at all.
I mean, you just described a paradox where accepting that you're not perfect and you're going to have to work on this together brings you closer to perfection. But as soon as you start to attach to perfection as some sort of outcome, ideal, or final state, yikes.
Then you're in trouble.
Then you're in trouble.
Yeah. And I think once I realized, I think at one time, because we got married young at 20, and so I thought, you work through things the first couple of years, then just coast the rest of your marriage.
Right.
And as soon as I figured out that's not true, to realize that you work on it your whole life together, but you see the growth and the benefits and that it was worth it.
That's right. Yeah. I think that the story of spending a lifetime in a situation where iron is sharpening iron and actually I just said this where I said, I think one of the best reasons to get married is that the other person is a non-toxic instrument for your own personal evolution. Like we're not talking about abuse here, but like we're talking about someone who is going to hold you accountable to growing. Right. And you're going to do the same for them. And then you're going to begin to hold yourselves accountable. And I just think that's a beautiful story to tell with your life. Two people who are doing that with and for each other. I think it's a beautiful thing.
I think that's God's design. He didn't put us together to beat each other up, not physically, but mentally and emotionally our whole lives. No, that would be nor to retire from a spiritual journey and just kind of go, oh, we're married now and we've arrived. So now, but to be on the spiritual journey together.
Yeah, my spiritual director said to me on Friday, he goes, yeah, Kelly, everybody wants to be on the spiritual journey until they're on it. And there are moments in marriage where it feels like that, but that's what it is. It's a spiritual journey you're walking.
And they're all just seasons or times, and they're all growth opportunities.
Right on.
So wrap up with get connected. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so the third part of the process is getting connected, and in a way, it's treated as sort of, we think of getting connected as sort of like the work of relationships. And in this process, it's really treated as sort of like the victory lap of relationships. You've done the work to get regulated. You've done the work to disrupt the underlying emotional patterns, the underlying triggers of being triggered by a sense of inadequacy or a sense of abandonment. And now you're just able to show up more consistently, open-heartedly. And so this part of the process is about exploring what that looks like. Like, what does it look like for two people to fully show up authentically with their own wants and needs in relationship, and to learn how to open-heartedly and interdependently negotiate those needs, which are not always sort of like compatible with each other. That's possible with an open heart. With a closed heart, it wasn't, right? It was a battle. But now you get to do it collaboratively, to participate and dance with each other in that way. I also think in the process really concludes, and the book concludes with this idea of you are, I believe, free from the cycle of rupture and repair when your partner can show up with their protections, and instead you see the pain point underneath those protections. When you can respond with that kind of compassion, I see how you're showing up, and I know, like, these days, if my wife gets really intensely defensive, more often than not, my first thought is, wow, you got to be in a lot of pain to protect that much. What's the pain that just got triggered in this moment? I'll give you an example. We went for a bike ride on Saturday. It was supposed to be like an relatively easy ride. And about a quarter of the way through it, I was feeling so good. I'm like, I think we have this loop that we do together. It's like, I think I could PR this loop. I think I could set a personal record. I'm feeling great today. So I started to really like dig in. I could see her falling behind, and I started to, and she was not able to keep up. And there came this moment where I was like, I know my wife. I know what's going to happen here. If I continue to dig in and hit my PR, she is going to feel her abandonment feelings are going to be so triggered by the end of this ride that I left her behind. And she's going to come in blazing hot. She's not going to be coming in going, I feel abandoned by you. She's going to be, and so what I did, I made a selfish decision to get to PR, and I left her behind. And we get into the garage, and the first thing she says to me is, I'm never going for a bike ride with you ever again. Right? So that's her protection. Right? Fine. You want to leave me? I'm leaving you forever. Right? As far as bike rides go. And so there's a couple of things that are happening in that moment. Number one, I'm able to see the abandonment feelings underneath the self-protective behaviors. And I'm able to connect with the abandonment feelings. Also, because I've worked through a lot of my inadequacy wounds, I'm able to admit I was selfish. In the past, I would have been like, why are you blaming me? You should be happy that I had a great ride. You should be supportive of me. Here I'm like, you're right, I was selfish. I chose a PR over sticking with you. And I even did that knowing that was going to hurt you. That was really, really selfish. I can own that, right? So all of a sudden, there's compassion for myself, and not a defensiveness of myself, but a compassion for my own decision as well as for her pain point. And the transformation that, I mean, in the past, we would have fought about that for a week. Mm. And in this case, now we're actually talking about what's going on under the tender things that are going on under the surface of that. And I give her a tremendous amount of credit. I mean, I saw her do the work. She opened her heart to me within a couple hours and received my apology, and we moved on in forgiveness. And so that's, to me, that's what getting connected looks like. It's like, oh yeah, when you're showing up triggered, I'm not seeing the triggered stuff. I'm seeing the stuff you're protecting under the surface of that. And I'm trying to be a safe space for that.
Yeah. I love that. It's such a great example. And I think one thing that I heard you say there too is it took her a couple hours that they made, I think sometimes we expect, well, I humbled myself. I connected with you. I did this.
Dude, yes,
Yeah, it's like, why do you need time? And I've learned to give that time. And I think we have to give that time, or everything we said just kind of, you can erase all the good stuff you said in just one word or one sentence.
Well, and you're raising a point that is essential, I think, to raise in any conversation about open-heartedness, that we can act open-hearted in order to get something out of our people, which is not really open-heartedness. It's closed-heartedness in a clever disguise, right? Like, I'll see your abandonment, I'll acknowledge it, I'll apologize for my selfishness, and now we're good right away, right? That's not open-heartedness.
No.
Open-heartedness is, I'll acknowledge what this moment is and then give you the space you need to work through your own triggered reaction to it. Yep, that's what it is.
To move toward so she can move toward open-heartedness.
Yes. Otherwise, it's just me trying to get us back to happy as fast as I can, and that's a transactional thing. It's not an open-hearted thing.
Absolutely. Did you set your PR?
I did. At least I got that. But you do realize that, this competitive part of me. My goodness.
I know.
Yeah, I've got my PR. Was it worth it? No. And hopefully that's another learning point for me next time. If I'm ever in that situation again, I'm like, really, do we need to PR today, or do we need to enjoy our ride with our wife?
Right. No, nobody sent you an award or a prize or a trophy.
No, it's just a game in my head that I tell myself if I win it, everything will be better, and it's not.
I think many of us as guys can relate to that, especially if we did competitive things growing up. Sports or whatever.
Well, and for me, it was a bike PR. For some people, it's a number in a bank account, right? For some people, it's a certain position or a certain number of followers on Instagram or whatever. But to recognize that those things they're games we've set up for ourselves. But this relational piece is, in the end, what we'll prize the most. Yeah.
They're not going to say anything about your PR at your funeral.
They are definitely not.
They're not. They're going to talk about the husband, the father you were, the important things. Yeah, that's what we want anyway. I don't want, sometimes I'll read an obituary and I think, oh my gosh, did he have time with his family? They're mentioned, they're listed because you kind of have to listen to your relatives and people down there. Right. But everything else was about him.
That's right.
I don't want that to be my obituary. I don't want that to be things that are said at my funeral.
Well, and when you talk to people who are coming closer to that horizon, that's the thing that they never say, I wish I'd have set a better PR on my bike. They don't even say that. They say, I wish I'd have gone on more bike rides with my wife.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. The spiritual journey is long, and we are learning these lessons over and over again.
Yeah, but we're learning.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit a minute ago about relationship deepening over time. So we got a couple that's listening today and they feel stuck. They're stuck in those conflict cycles that you and I both see in couples, and they can't imagine getting to where we're talking about. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them?
Yeah. I get it. When that cycle is so ingrained, you literally feel like there's no way out of it. I felt that after I made my New Year's resolution. It's why I wrote this book. I wanted to give people a step-by-step process. There's 9 steps total that if you're faithful to them, will show you daylight, will show you a new way of being. I mean, for me, I got the first tangible evidence of that about a year after I started intentionally practicing this moment to moment. I have historically been a terrible traveler. I've got some like air travel trauma from my childhood, like airports, like, they dysregulate me. Exactly a year after I started this, we just returned from a trip to Mexico as a family for Christmas. We were talking about our New Year's resolutions as a family, and my wife said, "Why don't you tell the kids about this open-heartedness that you've been practicing for the last year?" And I shared that with them. And my daughter looked at me. And she said, she was 12 at the time, and she said, "That must be why every time something went wrong on the way to Mexico, I looked at you and felt calm." And it hit me for the first time that open-heartedness wasn't just changing me, it was changing the people around me. As I was showing up as a calmer and safer space in those environments, that I was the soothed nervous system that was starting to soothe nervous systems without them even knowing it, without me having to do anything. That we don't really have control over other people, but we have an enormous power around people to influence how they show up as well. My encouragement to people who feel really stuck in the process is, I've been there. And when you dedicate yourself to the process, within a year, you can be showing up as a powerfully different influence for your people.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. Stick with it. Be consistent.
Well, we talked about the wisdom of our wives, but our kids have a lot of wisdom sometimes too. My kids have just kind of blown me over sometimes, especially growing up. I can't remember what was going on, but Grant was probably 10, and he looked at me and said, "Dad, you know better than that." And I go, "Yeah, yep. You're right." Yeah.
Yeah. There's a great book. I forget the author's name, like something like Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Great book about the wisdom of children. So good.
Oh my gosh, yes. Just listen to them too. God puts people in our lives, and amazing how he uses the ones who are close to us if we let him, for sure. The book is so good. I had the honor of getting an early manuscript and endorsing it, which was an honor. I just think it's a great book. It's The Road Less Traveled, Turning Conflict into Connection with a Single Choice. It is out, and you can get it everywhere.
Yeah, if I can correct one thing, you just said The Road Less Traveled.
Did I say that?
May this book sell as many copies as The Road Less Traveled. It's one of the best. It's okay. That's okay. That's all right. I'm glad you said it. I named this book The Road Less. Yes.
And okay, I'm going to say it again, but
The Road Less Triggered, because The Road Less Traveled is one of the most influential books in my life. It starts out with that famous line, "Life is hard, life is difficult," right? And how do we show up to those difficult moments? And so I thought, when I'm talking about a book where we have this choice, right, where we could take a path down the same old triggered path, or we could take the path of togetherness, what would I want to call this book? And when The Road Less Triggered came to mind, I was in love with the title. And folks can go to lesstriggered.com. The book will be out in a couple months, but right now you can go to lesstriggered.com and you can get, I think it's like $350 of pre-order bonuses to a master class, the first chapter right away, access to the launch team and all the bonuses that are going to come with that. So lesstriggered.com is the place to find it.
And the book is The Road Less Triggered.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that chance to talk about Scott Peck's book. It's a fabulous book.
I think it's a book that's affected a lot of us. Yeah, I read that a long time ago.
Yep.
Final question. What are you loving about your marriage today?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I better get this one right. I'm just kidding.
I'm not telling.
I would say the thing I love about, and my hope for the book is that couples will read it together and practice the steps together. Because to go back to that experience on Saturday with the bike, when my wife walked away and it's still not opened up to me, I've come to trust that she's going to go off and do the work to get her heart open again. Yeah. And just knowing that your partner is going to do that creates safety for you, like you said, to wait and to be patient and to feel like you don't have to hold them accountable. You don't have to sort of pry change out of them. And so I think for me, I just feel grateful every time I watch her doing the work of open-heartedness, and it frees me up to do my own work. And then if we're both taking personal responsibility for that, things really start to hum in a powerful way. I'm grateful for her and the work she's doing as well.
Yes, and it is steps, and people that are listening, don't get discouraged. Just stay on that road.
You got it.
And you'll eventually get there. Kelly, it's always so much fun to get together. I too love our conversations. I'm excited about the book, and I thank you for your friendship, and thank you for being a part of the podcast today.
Thanks for this amazing conversation.
Thank you.